To Georgia now, where early voting is underway to decide who will fill those last 2 Senate seats and ultimately decide which political party will control the Senate. Interest is high. More than 1 million people have requested mail-in ballots. Stacey Abrams, who has been a key organizer for Democrats in the state, spoke with CBS this morning, saying there are enough progressive voters to pull out a win.
My belief is, though, that there are enough voters who want progress, who want good for their families, who are going to suffer through this season of cheer by trying to figure out if they can put food on the table. And that's the kind of thing that we need to be talking about. We need to talk about what the future looks like. And the only way we're going to get to that future is if we replace Mitch McConnell and if we have 2 new U.S. senators who are going there not only to work for Georgia, but to work for a better America.
I want to bring in CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns now, who joins us from an early voting station in Atlanta. Hi, Caitlin. Great to see you. So, as I mentioned, you're at an early voting site there in Atlanta. What is the vibe there with voters? Do you feel there's a lot of energy there in the streets? Are people excited about voting again, or are they just a little tired of it all at this point?
Maybe a little tired of it all, but they know that the stakes are extremely high. We're at State Farm Arena, and this has been an arena that has transformed into an early voting location. We saw this in the general election, and it's doing it again this time around. As you can see, these voting booths behind me allow for social distancing, people to spread out. People say that it only takes about 3 minutes, really, to vote here, and that's been something that's very attractive to voters who want to get this vote in before the rush of the holidays, and that's something that both campaigns are encouraging people to do. Take a listen to one voter we spoke with about what this election means to her.
In terms of the election, it means a lot. Everything that America stands for Atlanta is on the line. So I was so ecstatic that Georgia turned blue this year, and just for all the millennials and the young people that they came out, taking over for the older people who stood before us. We have not had the leadership that we needed in terms of the pandemic. We should not be in this place. I'm actually currently unemployed looking for employment, but the fact that we have not been able to come together and being able to give people money who really need it. Thankfully, I got a severance for my job, so I've been fine. But I know there's so many people that's not their situation because they're essential workers and they have children. And getting unemployment and getting $365 a week with a family, there's not a lot that you can do with it.
And that's consistent with what we heard from other voters that we talked to today. They know that kind of the country is watching what happens here in Georgia.
So obviously there's a lot of attention on this race because it will determine the Senate, which party controls the Senate. Is that alone, expected to drive high turnout?
Well, that's going to be the challenge for both sides. Runoff elections typically don't have as high turnout as general elections. That's because they're happening in kind of an odd time, and again, kind of the rush of the holidays, people have a lot on their minds. But because these 2 races will determine who controls the Senate and ultimately whether Biden's agenda can get through Congress, that has placed an even bigger spotlight here, and voters know that that is what's really critical. So all the campaigns involved have been encouraging people to vote early, and the state is mandating that they start processing ballots a week before Election Day so that there aren't delays in reporting out the vote. Remember, the runoff election day is January 5th, and the new Congress convenes just the day after on January 6th.
And Caitlin, President-elect Biden is expected to be in Georgia tomorrow to stump for the 2 Democratic candidates. What talking points are the campaigns hammering home, and is any of their messaging sticking?
Well, when Biden comes here tomorrow, he is going to make clear what the Democrats have been saying for several weeks now, that they believe that if they can win these 2 Senate seats, that gives a 50-50 split in the Senate, with Kamala Harris as the vice president being the president of the Senate in a tie-breaking vote. They say that the Biden agenda will have a much better chance of getting by with support in the Senate. And so that's what they are messaging here, and that's what we'll likely hear from the president-elect when he comes here to campaign. Kind of shows how important this is to his agenda moving forward. Republicans, meanwhile, have been saying that Georgia is the last line of defense, as they say, against a Biden administration. Now, the messaging from Republicans is pretty complicated because on one hand, you have the president continuing to say without any evidence that the election was rigged and that it was fraudulent. In Georgia, of course, they had 3 recounts, 3 certifications of the vote, and just a few minutes ago, the Electoral College here, the slate of electors, those 16 electors, certified the results for Biden here. So on one hand, Republicans are saying that the election was fraudulent, but they also want to make sure that their voters turn out to keep these Senate seats.
Absolutely. And Caitlin, let's get to those campaign war chests. We know all of these races are attracting a lot of out-of-state money. Which side seems to be attracting more grassroots donors, and who seems to be buying the most ad space?
Well, Tanya, you can't turn on the television here for about 5 minutes without being inundated with political ads. I've only been on the ground here for about 24 hours, and I think I've seen 2,400 different ads. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but really, the airwaves are completely saturated. $400 million has been spent on the air. Republicans do have a slight advantage on the airwaves. There is a question of how much will that really matter? Remember, in some of these Senate races that we saw in the general election in South Carolina and elsewhere, Democrats were able to raise lots and lots of money, shattering records, but that didn't really get them that far in places like South Carolina, of course, where they lost. So there is this question about how this can motivate voters. And we're seeing from the two sides that really this is about turning out your base of support. Republicans generally have been favored in runoff elections. They've won all of the runoff elections that have been in this state. But remember, the demographics here are changing. The state, of course, flipped to blue in November, and Democrats hope to tap into those new voters.
Caitlin Huey-Burns in Atlanta, Georgia, thank you so much.
Thank you.